This is Fam Electric Ghost. We're live on the air for the first time with Crystal Fedeli. And thank you for joining us on the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. I want to let
Yes, thank
people
you for
know
having me.
that we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. You see that little icon up there that says listen on Newsly. If you use coupon code GHOST, you can get 1 month free premium subscription. And this podcast will be on Newsly later tonight as an audio only version of the podcast. So you can hear it there. And thank you again for being on the show. This is episode 938 of the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. Since 2016, we've been on the air. And tonight we're going to talk about this topic, how our current treatment system is doing to help those who find alcohol wreak their life, havoc in their life. So thank you again for being on the show. And we can kind of start that you're an alcohol recovery coach. So maybe you want to talk about what that means and to the audience so they can understand it.
Yeah, of course. So, I am an alcohol recovery coach and I help women reclaim their lives over alcohol, reclaim their power. So, go from alcohol wreaking havoc over them to gaining total power over alcohol so they can finally be free to create a life that they love, one where they look forward to each and every day.
I think that's very important because,
Yeah.
So yeah, however you want to start with how you got into this. And I think you have a master's in advocacy and policy, right?
Yeah, so I have a master's in child advocacy and policy with a child public welfare concentration. It's a mouthful. And then I have another master's in research and analysis. And then I have a grad certificate in data collection and management. And yeah, I was in the trauma and addiction recovery field for 10 years. And then I started my own thing. And so I guess I'm still in the field, but
So is
yeah.
there maybe your story about like why did you want to focus on this? Was there something in your life that made you want to focus on helping people with this issue?
Yeah, it's definitely just my passion project, my life's purpose. It was my story, and I was able to finally find the answer after nearly suffering for a decade. But and well, so let me start at the beginning. So basically, I started drinking alcohol. Just it was the socially acceptable thing to do. I think everybody basically starts because of that. And then after a few years, I realized it was wreaking havoc in my life, personally, socially, professionally, my health, and more. I was kicked out of a university. I lost a job because of it. There's just so many bad things that happened. Um, and so basically it just wreaked havoc, and I sought help because I'm a person where I have a lot of dreams, I have a lot of visions, and this was obviously getting in the way, and I was just suffering like inside. It sucks to
So when did you
suffer from
begin?
alcohol
Oh,
use
sorry.
disorder.
Yeah.
So I
When did you begin drinking alcohol? Was it
no,
something
go
that
ahead.
started really early for you, or later in like in college or before that?
My early 20s in college.
Was,
Yeah, my early 20s.
was it the
Yeah, in
college?
college.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So I
Was it
think
the
there's like a
college
delay.
environment? 'Cause I mean, I went to a school
Sorry.
in Maine, Bowdoin, and in back in the late '80s, like '86 to '90, and it was the culture, like a frat culture, sorority
Mhm.
culture, Friday, Saturday night, that it was like very excessive bad behavior to the point that those sororities and frats are no longer there at my college, Bowdoin. They got rid of them because of that kind of culture. What did you find it was like that
Oh,
kind of college
yeah.
culture of like binge drinking? Was that part of the problem?
Oh yeah, definitely. Drinking games. I mean, it was
It
fun,
wasn't.
until a few years in for me, and then alcohol started wreaking havoc. But at the beginning, it was real. I'm not gonna lie, it was fun. It was. But then it started wreaking havoc, and yeah. So I just started to seek help for
That
it.
when you started to seek help, was it easy for you to find help?
No, so I sought help from like therapists, from support groups like AA. I think everybody knows what Alcoholics Anonymous is. Celebrate Recovery. Uh, my pastor, I went up to the front of church after service for prayer. I was journaling and begging God for the answer, like, can you heal me? Like, what do I need to do? And I just did everything I knew how, and it just seemed I had an accountability partner. Like, there's so many things that I tried, and I just there is just like there was only one answer and one answer only, and it was, you have a problem with alcohol, and so you need to not drink ever again for the rest of your life. And if you don't do that, then you don't care about your life, you don't care about people around you. I didn't have kids at the time, so didn't say that at the time, but it's just like basically you don't care, and it's your fault if this continues. And so I earnestly I tried so hard, and I would have times where months would go by and I was like, okay, I'm 41 days sober, or like whatever, and but I was really like white knuckling it to try not to drink because I knew what would happen if I did. But I just, the obsessive thoughts and the cravings, the physical cravings for alcohol just do not cease. And eventually you give in and you end up drinking just the way you were when you put the alcohol down. It's like no time had passed at all. That's actually what we call the alcohol deprivation effect. It's, you would think, oh, like after all this time, it won't be so bad. Like maybe that person can get to where they were, but it'll take some time of drinking. No, right away. Wow, my face just got really bright. I don't know why. It's not light in here. Um, but right away, I just went just as if no time had passed. And yeah, and so it just was nearly a decade of that pattern
So
just
part of what
happening
you're
over and
doing
over
with
again.
your programs that you're coming up with is probably because you had a hard time finding something that was going to work for you, right? So it's like a lesson learned for yourself that you're taking your experience and trying to find a way to help other people that maybe had the same problem or having the same problem you had.
Yeah, exactly. Because what I found, so let me like finish, I guess, my story is that, basically, after nearly a decade of suffering, I was still desperate for the answer. I was praying and asking God this entire time. And finally, I came across this YouTube video, and it was a TED Talk. And the speaker was claiming that they found the cure to alcoholism. And I was like, this is too good to be true. So I discounted it originally. And then after some time had passed, I was already desperate, but I just got even more desperate, I guess. And I'm like, you know what? This could be totally, too good to be true, or maybe it could be the answer. And so I'm like, you know what? If I don't try it, I know that it's not going to work. But if I do try it, I have a chance. So you would think that that would be my happily ever after, right? But it wasn't, because I went to my family doctor, and my family doctor just tried to, same old thing, like tried to counsel me and, telling me to keep a drink log and trying to, moderate my drinking and, or to not drink at all. And through sheer willpower, as if like I didn't just explain. I tried for
Mhm.
nearly a decade and it's not working. And I want to try this new way. And then I was like, you know what? Can I just speak to like a higher up doctor? It's okay if you don't feel comfortable, but not that she said that, but I was like, maybe she doesn't feel comfortable. I'm like, can I just speak to another doctor who's like higher up? the clinical director of the practice came in, and the clinical director of the practice basically told me that she thought I was trying to go in through the back door for treatment. And then I went to another doctor, and she basically was like, you're just trying to be a doctor and treat yourself, because I shared with her, hey, I've tried all this for nearly a decade. It's really not working. Like, I'm really trying. It's not working. Can we try this way? You're trying to be your own doctor and treat yourself. And then I went to a third practice, and they just refused. Again, they refused to treat me. They were like, I'm sorry, we can't help you. And eventually they're like, you just need to leave our office. So I was so distraught. And meanwhile, all this time is passing, and I was also a brand new single mother. So I was like going through a very hard time with that. And so I, finally found a doctor who was willing to prescribe me the medication. The only thing was they didn't take my insurance, and I was a single mom at the time, and I was really struggling to afford my daughter's basic necessities plus daycare. And so I robbed Peter to pay Paul, and I took money from my rent, and I paid this doctor. And then a miracle happened where, in 2 to 3 months, I literally had no more episodes where, it's what I call them, where I drank way too much and did something that wreaked havoc in my life, socially, professionally, whatever. The obsessive thoughts and cravings completely went away. Everything was just completely better. My therapist of 5 years at the time dropped me as a client when I had gotten better, because she didn't agree with the way I did it, which is interesting because she was with me for almost 5 years of me just in this constant cycle of, just not relapsing, I guess you could call it, not being able to moderate or just abstain. So, it's really sad, but I guess that kind of so then fast forward, this is around the time where I think it's right at the beginning, when I started earning my 2 master degrees. And, in a master's level of studies, you're really able to do your own research and to focus on reading the research that you want to read. And so I really focused all of my research towards this topic. And I realized, oh my gosh, my story is not unique. The data is terrible on this. There's an issue. And then I'm like, well, why? And then I, was like, oh, this is our approach. This is the way our system understands somebody who suffers from a substance use disorder at large. Obviously, we're just talking about alcohol here. And so they approach it this way, but whatever you misdiagnose, you're going to mistreat. But then I, looked at alternative ways, one being the way that I did it. I was able to do it. And I'm like, the data is literally flipped on its head. So here's a couple pieces of data for you. So on average, someone will suffer from a substance use disorder for 10 years on average before they even seek treatment. So that's an average of 10 years. It's a long time. That's a decade. And then only 10 out of 100 will ever seek treatment. That means 90 out of 100 people will not seek treatment. 90% of people will not seek treatment ever in their life. Only 10% will. And then only 1 out of those 10 will be successful in treatment. So what does that say? That means we have a 1% success rate. Or the alternate way of saying it, we have a 99% failure rate.
It's not being nailed.
Why? Why do we have a 99% failure rate? Well,
it doesn't seem like the doctors are analyzing are analyzing the problem in the right way.
Yes. Yeah. That's my conclusion. That was my hypothesis for my research. And so I just kind of kept reading more research, what's going on? Well, the approach is that kind of what our society thinks. And so my idea is that, society is the umbrella, and then the treatment providers are under that umbrella. They have a bias from society. And so they have something we call the research calls, I should say, a practice-based approach. So basically, substance use disorder treatment is based on providers' opinions and tradition, what we've always done. But I think that's silly. That's a silly standard for continuing to do something we've always done. If we see that the data is showing we have a 99% failure rate. Now, this is juxtaposed with an evidence-based approach, right? And so evidence-based is based on research. And what is research? I have a whole degree in it. Basically, watered down what research is what works for the most amount of people in the best way, the most amount of time, right? And so there are other ways to treat alcohol use disorder and substance use disorder at large, really. Again, I focus on alcohol, but and it flips that data that I just shared with you, that 99% failure rate, on its head. It flips it on its head. In fact, the way that I went, it has an 89% effectiveness rate. Or I should say it has an ability to have an 89% effectiveness rate. So all the clinical trials demonstrated a 78% success rate, but there was 11% non-medication compliant, which I hate that terminology because it's like, I hate the whole compliant word because I just feel like it's punitive terminology, but just go with me here. That's, how it reads when you read it. So that's what I say. So if everybody was medication compliant, then I guess we have a possibility to have an 89% effectiveness rate. And then 11% of people, that medication that I used, it just doesn't work for everybody. So, but there are a total of 6 medications that can treat alcohol use disorder. 3 are FDA approved for the treatment of alcohol use disorder. Obviously that, it doesn't mean that you can't use the other 3. It just means that the FDA approves 3 medications specifically for the treatment of AUD, but you can use other medications for other uses. The doctor can do it at their discretion. So there are other medications and combinations like that can work. So anyways, it's just really, really sad. And even, by the way, I'm going on and I will continue until you stop me because this is my soapbox.
I guess my question is, is it that for the most of the time you were going for treatment, no one gave you these options, these medications as options until you got to that final? Yeah.
Nope. And when I tried, and then when I tried, I told you, I'm trying to go in the back door to treatment. I'm trying to be my own doctor and treat myself. Those are the answers I got, all while I had my baby with me, my brand new baby, because I was a single mother, as single of a mother could be, with my child's father, my first child. Now I'm married with 2 kids, but my first child's father told me, if you go ahead with the pregnancy, you'll be on your own. And that's exactly what happened. He left. And then, of course, I don't have any family because of my childhood. That's a whole other story for a whole other time, which is actually another topic because, so just a whole other topic because, there's this like widely held belief that people use substances or alcohol, again, I focus on alcohol, to self-medicate because of trauma or a mental health condition. Okay, I understand that. That can be true. But here's the piece where I think people miss. So whatever causes someone to pick up the alcohol, the difference of what I'm talking about of alcohol use disorder being a neurochemical disorder where basically like just your brain, the stuff that makes up your brain on the inside, just like your inner, like your chemicals that are in your body, like all that kind of stuff. And your brain isn't just up here, it's all over your body. Whatever causes someone to pick that alcohol up, whether it's a trauma or whether it's just because it's socially acceptable, when it doesn't matter why they pick it up. The point where somebody who has alcohol use disorder, that's a neurochemical disorder, and that I would argue the majority of the population has it, the very fact that they cannot stop drinking, that's the person I'm talking about. That's the person that I'm trying to help. Because if you could just put it down and just be like, oh, you know what, I'm not just going to have this other drink because it's probably not healthy. I'll stop at this one or two. That's not alcohol use disorder. Well, I guess it could be classified as alcohol use disorder, like low on
Mhm.
the spectrum, because AUD
Mhm.
is on a spectrum. There's low, medium, high, right? And you
Low and
can
high.
vacillate between whatever. You can be low and then you can go high. You can be medium. You can be medium high. I was mostly medium to high or to super max. But, the very fact that someone literally cannot moderate or literally cannot abstain, that is who I am talking about. And we are doing people like me a disservice. And if you want to get into the whole child welfare implications, there are so many children suffering because they can't be with mommy or daddy because they suffer from a disability that's thought
Yeah.
of as something behavioral,
So
as a
it seems like,
choice,
yeah,
and it's not.
seems
So
like there
if
are
if
some
you're,
judgments the
yeah,
society has made when you have an addiction problem that's like chemically dependent in your brain. And once you get on that train, that's not something that your
yeah,
willpower is going to control. But some people have pre-existing belief systems or old concepts at a societal level, and they're kind of blaming the victim, and they're kind of saying it's your responsibility, and they're not looking for, like, if I'm a cancer, I had cancer, so I took chemo and radiation, and nobody has a
yes,
problem giving me that, and they
mhm,
give me those medications. But if you have an alcoholic,
yeah,
you know, problem that's an addictive problem, that's a disease that still needs something similar to like a chemo or a radiation. You need the treatment. But if you have a judgmental society, they say, "Oh, we're
yeah,
not going to pay for that because we think it's willpower, or we think it's this, or we think it's morality." Then you can see the disconnect of why people are being allowed to suffer, because it's like, oh, people deserve their pain. There's a mindset out there that seems like there's a belief like that, in my opinion. But that's
oh yeah, and I mean, oh, don't get me started on that topic of, it's so actually very cheap to treat alcohol use disorder, especially through medication assisted treatment. It's so cheap. Actually, the more you do the method I did, the less
oh,
you
that's
need it.
funny.
There's no profit in it. There's no money in it. So I mean, I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories, but you know, but it's so simple to treat, and I think it just needed someone to kind of step up to the plate. And so that's why I've done what I've done. I've created the connections I need to make. And so when my clients come to me, I connect them with all of the resources that they need to, overcome alcohol wreaking havoc in their life. And, I connect them. Well, I should say first, what we do is we discover what somebody's goals with alcohol are, right? Well, first I share with them what all their options are, today. If anything were possible, what would you want? Here's your options, that I know of, at least. And then the second step we take is we really discover what somebody's goals are with alcohol. And that is probably the hardest part, because there's a lot of people who, they want something, but they won't even verbalize it because they don't believe it's possible. And that's so sad to me, because it's just not true. There's a way, especially for alcohol use disorder. You want to be abstinent? Cool, let's do it. You want to moderate? Cool, that's more than possible. You want to moderate and then go abstinence, or do you want to be abstinent now and maybe moderate later? Do you want to moderate now and be abstinent later? Whatever, And so then after we uncover somebody's goals, which literally takes the longest time, but that's okay. I love doing it, because nobody ever gave me that opportunity for nearly a decade. I had to fight for it and figure it out myself. Um, then the second step is I connect them with, we write their own treatment plan, essentially, right? Because when you go to a treatment provider, everybody wants to write a treatment plan for you. I think that's ridiculous. It's your body. You should have a choice over what your plan is going to be, especially if you even look at, the stages of change, like what is going to ensure that somebody creates true and lasting change. Well, if they agree with what's going on, right? If you try to force something on somebody, they're most likely not going to do it. You know, they might say, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, but they're not really, their heart's not in it, right? So, anyways, then the next step is connecting them with all they need to accomplish their goals with alcohol. Um, so those are most of the steps I take my clients through. And it's everything I wish that I had when I was going through all of this. But yes, anything is possible, moderation or abstinence or a combination of both.
So when you were
So,
telling your story about how the doctors were kind of like, disagreeing with you and kind of kicking you out or not listening, and it just seems like that's just not the kind of service you think you should get when you're, is it because of the kind of stigma that they were judging, and they were coming from like a 90% failure rate, and then still trying to tell you that they were the expert.
yeah, me and doctors don't really get along in any capacity though, because yeah, I'm kind of the person where I have questions and I'm always like, well, why? Well, what's the risk to that? Or I don't just like top down someone tell me what's going to happen. It's like, no, actually, you're the expert on all the inner workings of my body, but I'm the expert on me and what I want to do and what's best for me. And I know my body and with an intuition that you don't. So, I'm hiring you to consult with to help me make the best decision. Like you don't make the decision here. But anyways, now I'm getting off on another tangent. Obviously, I'm very passionate about lots of things, but yeah, but here's the thing, I don't even think that doctors realize this data. I don't think they realize. That's why I do what I do. Even I'll tell you this. Even my friends, some of them to this day, still insist that I was suffering from alcohol use disorder, or that anybody suffers from alcohol use disorder because of a
Hmm.
trauma or a mental health disorder. And even though they saw my transformation, it must be like cognitive dissonance or something. And so that's why my goal is really to just help as many people and connect them with, who or what, is going to help them. Because it's like, okay, fine, you want to think this way, you can be wrong. There's the crowd over there, and I'm going to do what's right, and I'm going to get free despite you, because I'm
Hmm.
not reliant upon you. So I kind of seem a little bit aggressive, but it's just really sad when somebody's denied treatment. And
It just seems
so,
like
yeah,
there's this
yeah.
a bias, like you've indicated, where they want to go into this whole kind of therapist kind of analysis, is the inner child was wounded or you had some kind of issue, and that's why there's some people that that's what they believe and that's what they've been taught, and they get their PhD and that's what they believe in. And for certain people that might be the way they can solve it, but if you've got a 90% failure rate, it doesn't seem like it's solving it. So the issue is like evidence based. Makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I'm a cancer survivor, and I had to make some choices when I was
Mm,
going for my treatment. There was one treatment that would have been basically a placebo, and it wasn't really going to do anything. It was like a 50-50 shot. It wasn't real. And then there was something that was like a real surgical procedure that had a high rate of success. And it's like, why the heck would I ever take something where it's 50% shot? I got a level 3 sarcoma that I'm going to take a 50% shot that what you're giving me is not even real.
mm,
And we'll see my sarcoma go to 4. And we're like,
yeah.
why would I do that? So as I had to be, at least I took the time, and I was 27, but I thought, well, how many people didn't actually do the research and just listen to the doctor and told them to do that first thing? And so that I understand what you're talking about with doctors,
Yeah.
because I had to do some research, and I'm still here because I figured out which one to use. I guess I picked the right one.
Yeah. Well, we're happy you're here.
But I get
We're
it. I
happy you
get what you're
figured it
saying. You
out.
have to kind of
Yeah.
take responsibility and do some some work. When you expect people to do it for you, but sometimes you got to do it for yourself. That's what it seems like your lesson learned.
Yeah, I think it's really sad because like we're all busy, right? We are all experts in our own thing, right? Not everybody can go and get 2 grad degrees, right? Not everybody, can go and be a medical doctor, and we rely on professionals and experts to be professionals and experts. But then there is this balance of you do really have to kind of have a little bit of knowledge and, um, kind of make sure that everything's going right. So
But it seems like your
so yeah.
experience with seeking treatment has, created, your new program. But I wonder, like, how do you find people before they go down like the road you went? You try to catch them before they find out that they've been, wasting their time doing things that like don't have a success rate. How do you reach people before they or did they? I guess what's the path for the person that comes to you? I mean, how do you?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people come to me after spending years trying traditional treatment routes, and they're just so heartbroken and they're hopeless. So how do I just by getting this message
Mhm.
out, by talking to you, by speaking engagements, I try to book as many as I
Yeah,
can to share.
I can hear it.
Sorry, that's
That's
my
okay.
2-year-old. I don't know if you hear him screaming in the other room, but I'm a mom over here, 2 and 5-year-olds. But so yeah, I definitely, try to speak as much as I can about it. And that's why I started my business, so I could, be that person to help, because there's not a lot of us around doing this very specific alcohol recovery coaching work, because people don't know. People don't know. That's really the thing. Or they don't accept that, there's a lot of people who have criticism for the work I do. And, you just got to kind of accept it, even some of my friends. But it's just like, okay, but I was literally at risk of ruining my life and my kids not having a mom anymore. Or, you know, I'm free. I literally like have alcohol has no power over me. So it's again that cognitive dissonance. So yeah, but that's why I kind of created my resource, the 3 ways to reclaim your power over alcohol. And yeah,
So
so I I try as best as I can. There's not a lot of me out
so
there
getting the
doing this
word
work.
out, do you find that podcast or like going to like public speaking forums, is this podcast type of tool, is this something that works for what you're trying to do, or is it more of a public symposium or some kind of do you find a way to do it that way through public speaking? Are there outlets for you to do it there?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I do a lot of speaking engagements in many different ways. Like obviously a podcast is one way of doing a speaking engagement. So and then people can kind of learn who I am and look me up and be like, "Oh, okay, this is cool." And then obviously some people download the free resource, and then some people, want to take it further with me, and I'm able to help them, and then I'm so happy because it's just so amazing to be able to do what was not done for me. I mean, it probably seems like it just was so easy for me, but it wasn't. There was a lot of it, just besides the point of finding what my goals truly were and what truly worked for me. But there was a lot of troubleshooting, that came up along the way. And there were providers that I found, but it was very how do I say, like, maybe I saw them, but in isolation over here or in isolation over there. Like, obviously, I am there with my clients. Like I walk them through, they have access to my phone through voice messaging, and like I'm there to help them troubleshoot and walk them through and give them options along the way. Like I hold them through the whole process so they're not alone. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking about my what I do
No, but
so much because I'm just so passionate about it. But it's just
that's the
everything
point.
I
Like
wish I
once you get
had.
to a
So
point where you find your like life goal. Like I talk to a lot of life coaches and a lot of mentors, and it seems like they kind of most of their stories are they went through it, and then they discovered they want to be an advocate. They want to be like a teacher. They want to be get in that mentor role. They want to be in that coach role because they feel like that's going to give them purpose. Like they sometimes people were kind of not
yes.
feeling their purpose. And then once they solve their own problem, they felt so powerful about that that it becomes their purpose is to help other people and lift other people up. Seems to be a common thread with a lot of the people I've talked to. So it makes a lot of sense to me that you'd be excited about it and really into it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so much different to have a soul aligned business, a business that is your life purpose. Because I had another business before I started this one, and it was just because I was really good at it. And I made the decision, not in the too recent past, to completely shut that down and be like, you know what? No, I'm just focusing on this. Um, I'm also like a mom and a wife, and I have my fur babies too. So they're a year-old puppy and a 7-year-old, and I just I was and I had to step away from other things I was involved in my community because I'm like super involved. I was going to run for board of education in my town this year, but I'm like, no, I do want to run for like assembly one day at the state level, but not now, not now. And I'm just like, I have to focus on this one thing. First, the first ministry is to my family, but second is that my ministry to my work here, my clients and people who just listen to me, like here on this podcast. And it's soul aligned, and it's just it is so much different. And you're right, because I come from kind of like the therapy and that kind of world. And I almost got my degree in social work, my master degree, but I was like, you know what? No, I actually believe more in life coaching. And I believe more in life coaching because you are 9 times out of 10 guaranteed that that person has literally gone through it, and they are now standing victorious in what they clawed their way out of, whether that be starting your own business or doing a mindset,
Hmm.
shift, or like a money mindset, shift, going from a poverty mindset to a wealth conscious mindset, or what I do, right? Overcoming alcohol use disorder, reclaiming my power over alcohol. And so I just feel like it just sets you up for more success. And coaching is different. Coaching is sometimes like, it's okay, we're going to get through this, whatever. And sometimes coaching is, listen, these things, and let's do them. Like, you've got it in you, I'm right
Yeah.
here with you, let's do it together, come on. you know so there's something in coaching that you just don't find
I think it's a more
in
personal
other
thing.
things.
It seems
So
like a lot of times with some other things like this, maybe there, there's science and things, and then there's like, the kind of top down doctor mindset is different than a life coach because they're kind of coming top down. Like they got the PhD, they got this, and if you're coming from a life coach, it tends to be more like, okay, there's not psychobabble, but you're actually what I've found with really good life coaches is that they have very good listening skills. They actually figure out who their clients are and are not just trying to build them based on some kind of
yeah,
scientific roadmap. Not that they don't follow scientific processes, but there's a lot of human factor. And being a musician, it's like, am I going to go use AI
yes,
or am I going to talk to a record producer that's actually done it? Right. I'd rather talk to a guy and talk to a bass player that
yeah,
actually played instead of using a machine. Right. I'm going to actually want the human factor. I'm one of these musicians. I
yeah,
don't really want to use the computer. I want to use people.
Yeah.
I want to deal with people. I want to hear what they have to say, what they want to do. And to me, it's like that's a better outcome because it's a human outcome. So I think it's the same kind of idea. What I've over talking to like a couple hundred life coaches is that it seems that that's like that kind of thing. The common thread is that human experience and listening skills and empathy. I think that is maybe what the doctors don't have. They've kind of lost some of the empathy. That's what it seems like to me.
Empathy is huge. Yeah, empathy is huge. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely huge. And then also really getting the consent, right? Well, obviously I don't get consent, from my clients. Really, it's more what are your desires? What are your passions? Can I help you? Like, do I know from where you are and where you want to go? Do I know that I can walk you across that chasm successfully? Okay, cool. Then let's work together, right? If
Mhm.
not, I don't always make an offer to work with people because I might not be best suited. And of course, I point them in another direction. I leave them with, something. I'm not going to have them go away empty handed. But we have to totally be aligned. Um, but yeah, it definitely, I just feel like a lot of, and I don't want to like hate on doctors because there are really good doctors out there. Um, but yeah, I just find in my experience, you have to be careful because a lot of doctors or even therapists will, there's quite a number that I've experienced will just try to tell you what's going to happen, and I don't think it works. But there are good ones out there
Yeah.
too,
I
ones that
found,
I'm connected to. So
sometimes that there's a disconnect between like all the legs that make a person. Like I was dealing with like cancer doctors that weren't talking about nutrition. They weren't talking about like other things
mm,
besides, like there's a person you have to look at what you eat, what you do, the whole picture. And sometimes an oncologist might be very
yes,
narrowly focused. A radiologist is very narrowly focused, but there seems to be the need to have somebody that's looking at the overall picture, but they're very specialized. And I understand the specialization. I mean, I survived because they were guys that were specialized. But I think there's a disconnect where they
yeah,
don't put the holistic approach. And I think that's missing, I think, is the problem.
yes, yes. Yes, definitely. I that's those are the kind of doctors and therapists that I'm connected to are the holistic ones because I believe in integrative, holistic, medicine, alternative medicine, Western medicine only when necessary, but mostly Eastern. That's my approach. I'm more holistic, which is kind of like it sounds probably funny because it's like, but Crystal, you advocate for medication assisted treatment. Well, yes, I do because, that's the only way to cure alcohol use disorder um, for the most amount of people, and you don't need to use the medication for long. And there's other components in your treatment that, but I love that you are using cancer. Well, I mean, I don't love that you're using cancer because it's sad that it's a thing and what you went through. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that you figured it all out and that you're well. But I'm kind of glad that you're using that as a metaphor, kind of as a comparison, because I use stuff like that. Like I'll use like medical conditions that we as a society typically have
Yeah. Yeah.
compassion on people when they're suffering from those conditions. And a lot of times, people will be like, "But substance use disorder, alcohol use disorder is
Yeah.
completely different. It has nothing to do with it." And usually, like when we get down to the nitty gritty, it's because, well, again, they think that people do it because of behavioral reasons that they choose to do it. But I'm really glad that you're using that as the comparison because in large part, we view like cancer, for example, as something that's not that person's fault, right? Now, of course, changing up maybe some lifestyle things like what kind of foods you eat and how much you eat of it. Just like right now, I'm trying to lose my
Yeah.
baby weight. And so I got to track my macros, but amazing things are happening. I'm losing the weight. Or maybe you have to like intentionally learn how to not be so stressed or whatever, if you have a stress response or something like that. Like there's different things you can do, right? But the point being is that even if those are appropriate treatment plans, we still have compassion upon that person. We don't view it as their fault.
Yeah.
Substance use disorder, no. If you're an addict, you're a terrible human. You are choosing to hurt people. And we treat you like you need to be punished. And you absolutely do not. It is not your fault. It is a neurochemical disorder. It is a disorder of your neurochemistry. And it should be treated as such. It should be treated as a condition that needs to be treated. I went for nearly a decade suffering, and then I got better in 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, it's a
It's that simple.
disconnect. There seems to be a disconnect,
But
a lot of times because, society, I was a sociology major, even though my job is software design.
nice.
But what I thought was interesting about sociology, you study, behavior at a micro level, but individuals and then group level. And then we look at nation level and then, so interactions at multiple levels and different ethnic groups, different cultures. And you can see certain, behaviors, human behaviors are modeled and it's not always logical. A lot of times it's cultural, it's historic, it's because they've always done it. And you see a lot of patterns that are disruptive
Yeah.
to the overall society just because people didn't really try to unpack it. And I always thought it's an interesting way to look at things because you can, psychology is like you're talking about yourself or talking about individuals, but when you look at sociology, it's looking at that same kind of pattern with groups, and then you can see why things happen. You can see
Yeah.
patterns. Being a songwriter, I use it a lot to kind of inform why the songs I write, to give it like a basis. But I think it's a good kind of understanding what you're talking about with what happened to doctors and general society, having a massive failure rate and still putting it all on the person, putting on the person who's suffering from alcoholism and making them responsible when statistically you could show that it's not, but they're not solving the problem. And that seems like it's a societal group think
Yeah.
instead of open up your mind and think about it a little deeper.
Yeah. And, I don't think they know. And I think they have unconscious bias, if I can use it in this for this subject. But I think it's appropriate. It's they're not aware of it, and it is a bias that they have from our society at large. That's why I say the society is the umbrella, and doctors and all these other people, therapists, whatever, they're just underneath that umbrella. And it's just an unconscious bias. And then also, I think when somebody like me comes in the patient room, they're like, who is this? Like no patient of mine has ever come in with research printed out, highlighted, and is like sharing, she is trying to be her own treatment provider. Like, and then I think maybe a little ego maybe comes into play because like, I'm the doctor. I went to medical school. I know, what it is. And, I tried to do it the nicest way possible. But it's like, I was my own advocate. I needed help, and then also it's because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the fact that I had a child, who needed her mom. And because dad was nowhere to be found. Now, of course, I have my husband and he's like her father, but, it wasn't just about me anymore. So I was like even more serious. Like, not that I wasn't not serious before, but I was just like, let's go. Like, I need to fix this. So I was desperate, but I eventually found what I needed. Right. But, I'm a Christian, and I love the Lord with all my heart. And I just really feel like God has just, helped me become so free. And so, one of the scriptures that really resonates with me for this particular situation, I think it's Romans 8:32. So, but it basically says, like, if you know the truth, it will set you free, right? And one of my favorite translations, the Passion Translation, because it just, I feel like it just uses English in a way that we really use it today. It's not like that old thine, thou, thee, whatever. But anyways, this is how it translates that scripture. If you accept the truth, you will be set free. So I think it's not even just knowing the truth. I think it's accepting the truth. And I think when I share this information with people, I think, some people are like, okay, well, now I know of it. I've heard it, but I don't accept it. That's ridiculous. Just like I told you, a lot of my friends will still have this conversation with me today, and maybe I seem like I'm coming from a position of I'm right and they're wrong. No, they're not wrong. Like, alcohol use disorder can come from a place, like, you can pick up alcohol because you're trying to cope with trauma. My whole point is that if you can't stop and actually put it down, then that's when you have
Yeah.
a neurochemical disorder. It's a physical addiction to alcohol. And there's so many people that I know, and I haven't read the research on it. I don't know if it's been done, to be quite frank with you. Maybe I should do the research project on it. I am a researcher, but where they didn't have crummy childhoods. They had amazing childhoods. They have family that loved them. They've never had trauma, happen in their lives, and they still are physically addicted to alcohol. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, is the person that is physically addicted, that absolutely cannot stop, that gets obsessive thoughts and cravings that come every hour, every half hour, every 5 minutes, right? Until you pick up that drink of alcohol, and then you literally cannot stop drinking. That is who I'm talking about. The small subsection of the population who can just put it down, that's not who I'm talking about. Kudos to them. It's so amazing that they're able to do that. That's awesome. Like, I'm so great. And my friends who I have these conversations with, they're right. They're right about that. But I'm talking about what's going to be the best for the most amount of people, because we don't have that right now. And so hopefully I can change the world. Hopefully God can use me to change the world in that.
Well, I think that's why you're helping others, because you found a way to help yourself, and now you want to kind of spread that. And it is kind of this idea, because a lot of people, they let the default position be what, somebody who supposedly should know the truth, or they're educated at a level that, but I started to question doctors. Being a cancer survivor, you have to be an advocate for what's going to work for you, right? And so there's all these different things you can do, kind of like the things you found, right? And there's different levels that you could be in, but you have to kind of do the work. And then some people don't want to do the work because they figure, like, this person's a PhD, they should tell me. But sometimes the way life is, like, you found a situation where they're not solving the problem. So then if they're not solving the problem, then you need to have advocates like yourself out there for the people who have been in the system and they've been hitting that wall. If you hit the wall, then you got to figure something else out.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, definitely. And actually, what I also wanted to tell you is that, so you're like a songwriter. I'm kind of switching gears here maybe a little bit, but it's so funny because I actually I wrote this song. It's called "We'll Make It Through," and because I sing and write music too. I play the guitar and like keys a little bit, just so I don't have to sing a cappella. But it's called "We'll Make It Through," and it was actually literally in 2015 when I was being kicked out of it was right before I was kicked out of the university, because I was just suffering from alcohol use disorder so much. And it's just so funny it's like this whole song of like, God, because when I write music, I don't sit down and like write it. Like, it either comes to me and I have to pull out my iPhone really quick and sing it, because it'll just come like chorus, verse 1, verse 2, the bridge, everything.
That happens.
Or I don't write at all. I don't have Yeah, I don't have the patience to sit down and write. I don't
A
know if
lot of
you're
good
like
stuff
that,
comes
but
stream of consciousness.
um
Yeah, stream of
so
consciousness is a
anyway,
valid thing. It's a valid way of writing.
yeah.
So don't feel it's not.
Okay. It's fun because I don't talk to other songwriters, so I've never had this conversation before. But yeah, so I it was just kind of like basically God saying like we're going to make it through. Like we're going to the other side. Like don't give up on me. I long to save you. We're going to make it through. And anyways, it's just like really cool that God gave me that at that time because it took a couple years, but we finally made it to the other side. And it's just cool like when you get that and then it actually comes true. It takes a little bit of fight and some stress and maybe a couple of years, but yeah, anyways, I don't know why that like
No,
came out of left field, but that's
well,
how
I
my
think it's
brain works.
important.
It's like,
It's
oh,
important to
over here, over
express
there,
what's
like
there. A lot of what I'm a big advocate for art therapy, or what we call music therapy, because most musicians, and people
mm,
don't realize, most songwriters have a lot of issues. And what they've found is the act of
yes.
writing the song is cathartic for them, right? So I, as a songwriter, I
Mm,
fully admit that my songwriting, I do it whether it's going to be a hit or not. I do it because it's cathartic, because I process whatever those feelings are, whatever they
yeah,
are, and try to be as honest as possible and just put it out. And for me, it kind of clears my soul and my heart at the moment. And a lot of people, when they go into therapy, they find that, if you're not a creative person, you find a way to do that some other way. But as artists, we tend to do it that way. We tend to take those impactful moments and be able to express them. And if once we get it out of our system, it kind of that's out there, that we were able to work through it. But I think that's the thing why people go to coaches, they go to therapists,
mm,
because they don't know how to do that, or they don't know what to do to kind of process their feelings, or to process their issues, or figure out how to solve their problem. I find a way, to do that. So I think it's like when you did that, that's kind of like you're processing that pain. That's a good thing to do that.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's so true. I never thought of it that way. So I guess my whole ministry, my business, and what I do is a piece of me being
Yeah,
an
I,
artist.
I,
I never thought of it like
I
that.
have actually
That's
said
cool.
on many podcasts that, like, people who think they're not artistic, if you're a life coach, or you're a therapist, or you're an entrepreneur, and you're creating something, that's the human being creative. Human beings are inherently creative. Some people think, oh, I'm not Michael Jackson, I'm not Bob Dylan, I'm not
Yes.
Diana Ross. That doesn't matter. Human beings are inherently creative. And however you use it to do a program like
Yeah.
yourself, or to do whatever you're doing, anything you do as a human being, when you start to feel and connect, and put the dots together and come up with an idea, that's being creative. It doesn't have to be a song to be creative.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. I mean, I guess that really helped me when I had to create my graphics right now. But you're right. You're right.
So thank you for,
Yeah. It's
for
it's amazing. It's amazing to be able to create.
well, I want to thank you for telling your story, because
I'm sorry. I was just going to say it's amazing to be able to create things to help people.
yeah, but
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, sorry about
There's
that.
a
Yeah.
delay.
But yeah, I think it's great that we're kind of near the end of the show, because we're at the 58-minute mark. But I just want people to know about your website again. Uh, so you can go to that. That'll be fully clickable. When we publish, you'll be able to click on it, and you can go to it. And you tell people what happens if they click on your website.
Yeah, so basically, I think the link we have here, so that's my free gift to everybody who wants it. It's called Three Ways to Reclaim Your Power Over Alcohol. And just fill out your name, your email, and we'll get you that right over to your email, that free resource. It's totally complimentary.
That's awesome. Again, that's fully clickable on Facebook, YouTube, and all the other places we're going to be published. We're on almost everywhere you can watch or listen to a podcast. And we're going to give you a landing page that will have all the primary places that will be available for your audience tomorrow. And then wherever they like to watch or listen to podcasts, they'll be able to get to this podcast and then click on that. It will be active. So that I do encourage people who listen and watch our podcast to actually click the URLs of the guests that are on the show so you can get further information on what we've been talking about during the whole show. But I wanted to thank you again for being on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was such a great conversation.
Thank you. Have a great night.
All right, you too.